far as he was concerned, the car was way and by far the most important. And when you reflect on that, great drivers always wind up in great cars. So he's saying, I'm going to build a great car. That's why he wanted to obviously involve a discussion with Adrian, which I think is hugely popular for Adrian. That now I understand that every single team in Formula One has spoken to us, and indeed two teams that are not currently on the grid at the moment, and I'll let people think about that.
Hello and welcome to Formula for Success. I'm David Coulthard, and with me is the real anchor of this particular podcast, Eddie Jordan.
That's me, the real anchor.
I've got to tell you, EJ, we haven't actually seen each other for a couple of weeks. I've started to miss you.
No, it's not true. I did not miss you. I thought about you, and then I said, thank God he's away from me, because he drives me completely scatty. And luring me away into the pub and those shots and pints that I'm not really able to enjoy as much as I did do with you before, David, I'm actually pleased, and I've lost a bit of weight, and I'm feeling good, man.
Yeah. Well, you're looking good. We've just come off the back of the summer break, and we've just come back from Zandvoort. But before we get into that and do a look forward to the historic and fantastic Monza Grand Prix, I wanted to take you back a couple of weeks to the interview you did with Flavio Briatore. Now, I saw Flavio on the grid in Zandvoort, and he came up to me, and I thought he's going to mention something about Alpine and restructuring and everything. He went, "Hey, DC, we needed to do again the podcast because, you know, it was great with Eddie, but we need you as well." So that's my impersonation of an Italian.
Anyway. He told me he enjoyed it so much that you weren't there, so that he hardly knew you. So what's all the story?
In all seriousness, he said he would join us again. So it's just a case of maybe throwing it forward a couple of weeks or so,
sure.
And then we'll organise any given Monday. Seems like the best time for him. And I had a chance to talk with his young appointment, Oliver Oakes, former karting world champion, former racing driver, has run his own very successful high-tech racing team. So it seemed to me, EJ, it's very much kind of reminiscent to your own journey. You came up through racing, you ran your own team, then you actually, well, the only difference being, of course, you put your money on the line and set up your own team. But what advice, if any, would you give to Ollie Oakes? And have you actually met the man?
Yeah, look, the guy's a bit of a legend in his own time. And actually, if you want to learn the ins and outs of hardcore, and I said this on the show, and I have to say, we did miss you, DC. We talked very fondly about you. But Flavio is one of those guys who you would like to probably dislike, but you can't, because he's actually a very endearing person.
Sounds
and
a bit
some
like
of
you.
the things that we did, some of the things we did in Formula One and trickiness and stuff like that, he came up with the most unbelievable stories and scams, and that's why I loved him. He just was great. And you know yourself in motor racing, and somebody that you're very close with. It's very difficult to find somebody that you're totally compatible with and go on holiday over a period of time. And with Flavio, I can recall at least 3 holidays that I've been together, and I've enjoyed each and every one of them. The guy is a real star. I'm so happy he's back in Formula One. But I think you just mentioned something like that, because one of the other things, before we get on to Ollie Oakes, Flavio did go on about Adrian, and I think in that interview that you weren't able to join us, he made the point that as far as he was concerned, the car was way and by far the most important. And when you reflect on that, great drivers always wind up in great cars. So he's saying, I'm going to build a great car. That's why he wanted to obviously involve a discussion with Adrian, which I think is hugely popular for Adrian. That now I understand that every single team in Formula One has spoken to us, and indeed two teams that are not currently on the grid at the moment, and I'll let people think about that. But anyway, so Adrian is still there, so we put him to one side for the moment. But Flavio and Alpine, their modus operandi is they want to build the absolutely best car, and then they will attract the best drivers. Good philosophy.
Well, it's interesting that you bring up Adrian. That saves me having to sort of doorstep you with it at a certain point during this podcast, because I was watching some little clips off the back of the weekend, and Martin Brundle, our buddy, doing his grid walk, doorstepped Lawrence Stroll, which actually I don't believe for one moment there's the doorstepping of Lawrence, because he's more than capable of just walking away from people.
Sure.
But he asked that very question about Adrian. And actually, in my little clip that I saw on socials, I never saw the answer. So maybe you can help me. So
I don't know. You're telling me absolutely brand new news. I have to say, DC, I come back and I watch you, because I prefer the delayed action, because then you focus on the parts that are really the parts and the juicy parts. Martin, a glorious day, 3:00 in the afternoon. I mean, it's a family wrecker, isn't it? It just destroys what's going on. So I have no problem. My life was brought up with Match of the Day, which was always deferred till 10:00 on a Saturday night. And there were times that I didn't go out on a Saturday night waiting for Match of the Day. Now, I'm not saying the same thing applies to you, DC, but Channel 4 and what they produce, for me, is a much more entertaining show. But then at that stage, I probably know who the winner is.
Yes, indeed. Well, that's a wonderful answer, and we thank you for that, EJ, and you've contributed to that greatly. But if you could just answer the question,
No.
which is...
So, Oaks, he has a big job. Let me please tell you that working with Flavio is not going to be an easy ride. But one of the things that you will do is you will learn something that you will never learn with anybody else, because he has the nous, the knowledge, the mindset. I mean, how he thinks about things. But, the proof is in the cooking. Let's see how he gets on. It's a very big task, because he's got Luca. The thing that Flavio has attracted, and he always does, he got embraced by Luciano Benetton, and now he's just been embraced by Luca, the chief executive of Renault. So they are desperate to see some things happening. And let's not forget that Renault are a car manufacturer, and as a result, they are an engine manufacturer. Something that will say, the greatness of yesterday and stuff like that with McLaren, they do not have an engine provider, that they are being given engines by Mercedes. So long term, I'd have to say that the Renault and Ollie Oaks, he has a bright future, for absolutely sure.
Absolutely. I'm a big fan, having spent some time with him, getting to know him actually in conversations regarding my son Dayton and whether he progresses into cars at some point in the future. And I think he's got a very straight to the point, straightforward, matter of fact, racer's mind, which I think will stand him in good stead in Formula One.
Sure.
But I just wondered if there's any advice you would give him, EJ, because you were what age were you when you became a team owner, team principal? Because he's in his 30s.
Yeah, I think I was 31. I thought I was too old as a driver, but I was probably too young to be a team boss. But you're never too young if you're good enough. And I'm not saying that I was good enough, but I certainly was a better team boss than I was a driver. So if that in itself answers the question, maybe. But it was different to then. I mean, I started. I remember you being on a podcast talking about David Leslie. David Leslie was one of my very first drivers in Formula 4, Formula 3, and it grew from there. But they were very tough times. So Ollie is not having to endure that. He's going straight in, because he's been initially handheld by Flavio, and you could not wish for a better custodian than what he'll be able to do for him. So I see great things, and for sure he will be a very competent and dominant force in the future. I do believe Alpine will get themselves back in the frame.
Yeah, well, it does seem that they're destined towards Mercedes engines, restructuring of the team, and then a sale at some point down the line. What was about 30% is made up of a mixture of celebrity investors, and I guess the rest is in Renault's holding company. So at a certain point, I guess they'll just be looking to capitalise on the growing value of Formula One.
Well, a lot of these people, let's be honest, people like you and me, we go into investments looking at, what's the term, what's the likelihood, what's the downsides and what's the upside? And most people will not want to go beyond a 3-year exit, possibly a 5-year exit, and then maybe the main board may convince you that staying in a bit longer will recoup far more money. That's another alternative. But we don't want to go into the finances in this kind of a program. But for sure, there will be a need to be able to sell off some part of this company if they're not going to do it themselves.
Okay. That's interesting, actually, when you mentioned about the normal sort of 3-5, exit strategy of a lot of investors. I wonder, though, because of it being a sports entity, if you look at Dorilton Capital that have bought Williams, they've already been involved for a few years and looks like they're still heavily investing. They've managed to secure the signature of Carlos Sainz. There's so much actually that we can cover in this particular podcast. So do you think, because it's a sports asset, just to round that one off, that maybe they take a slightly longer term view, and then can we roll into actually what do you think about the Carlos news and Williams?
I do not like necessarily deals going on for too long. Not because of my age, but a 3-year deal is what I like, and a 5-year deal I will handle. However, with Williams in particular, and with sports entities, we must remember we're at the cusp of one of the greatest times of sport, because there is real profit and there is real upside in investing in sports entities. And if you look at the valuation of, say, the NFL, my God, what's going on? And this is kind of created, it was born in America, where massive amounts of money and increases on the massive. I mean, if you like the multiple, which is what these investors think about. So I put in 10, what is the multiple? And they want 3 times the multiple in a 3-year period, so they get 30 back for their 10. That's very nice reward when you look at it like that. But I'm not advising and wouldn't wish to advise any of our listeners without themselves getting their own advice financially as well as everything else, because it's a tricky business, and giving advice is even more tricky, because invariably as soon as you do, you screw it up.
Yeah, but saying that, are you not part of an investment fund where effectively it's not run out of your office, or is that just a personal family investment fund? It's not open to people, mere mortals like myself.
David, I wouldn't take your money, because you'd be crying and whinging and the old fucking Scottish, why me, fucking here. I need brave guys. Put the money in. Let's see how it rolls. Get the dice on the table and stuff like that. I joke.
I've got internal brave heart.
Actually, David, you're hopeless, because I'll tell you why. Every pound is you're not naturally a cold call investor. By that I mean you think about something, oh my God, I'd like to do that. But you're a much more sensible investor, and you're lower on the risk element, because the first thing I have to ask you on a situation like that is, what is your appetite? What is your level for risk? Is it 5%? Is it 10%? Is it 80% or something? Because everybody has a different opinion, just like they're able to breathe differently or walk differently or whatever it is. People have different understandings of what the risk that they wish to take. And it's not for me to talk to you about risk. I think you have some very clever people advising you on all sorts of things, just like I have. But mind you, they screw up as well. As you well know, David, I know some of the screw-ups you've had, and I've had plenty as well. So don't you worry. We're united in that score.
Well, we're still here. So, right, let's move it back to
Carlos Sainz.
Carlos Sainz, please. What are you thinking? What a lovely man, first of all. What a lovely family. This isn't show friends, though. This is about performance.
Carlos Sr. is one of the all-time greatest people that you could ever hope to meet, and that's embedded in his son. His mother is a divine lady, and I see quite a bit of them. The fruit fell very close to the tree, and that's why Carlos Jr. is such a gem. I feel for him because yet again he drove good race yesterday, not as good as Leclerc, but he's much more solid, isn't he? He's thereabouts. Now he's going to go to Williams, and he'll be with Alex Albon, and those two are a formidable duo in terms of, in my belief, about driving style and standard. They're absolutely up there. Either of them can win, and in fact, Carlos has won Grand Prix. So can Williams deliver? You say the investment is there, solid. James Matthews, I have a lot of time for him. We're old friends, maybe 30 years or so. So I know exactly what that family and what they're committed to doing. I have a belief that Williams may be a big surprise next year.
Yeah, I think they've got real potential. And in James Vowles, they seem to have secured a team principal that is steadying the ship. Although I have to share with you that he put out a little video message about the regulation impeding with the floor in Zandvoort, and someone was saying that it's sort of becoming known as the Reverend Vowles because it was a bit of a sermon rather than getting to the point. But I guess he hasn't lived all his life making public statements, so he'll probably hone that over a number of years because you've got to get to the point in a lot of these things.
I've been known to not get to the point several times, and I'm sure you've been known not to get to the point. You've certainly been known not to get to the bar early enough because you've got very deep pockets, DC, and your hand doesn't go to the bottom of it very often.
Oh, well, look, I'd happily buy you a beer if we were together. So just coming back to a question I asked you about 13 minutes ago. Lawrence Stroll, Aston Martin, Adrian Newey, surely they're the only ones that have the financial appetite. They've invested heavily, new factory, they've bought a car company. They must be the icing on the cake. For the other teams, it's a big capital investment in someone like Adrian. Yes, as we both are big fans, know that he'll deliver, but the numbers still need to add up. So, are you prepared to give our listeners a nudge and a wink that it will be Adrian at Aston? And the question is, when will that announcement come?
Oh, you keep coming back for more punishment. David, first of all, there's not a million in one chance of you getting an answer, number one. And number two, I would just ask you, we talked earlier in this program about Flavio talking about Adrian on the program, and then after the program talking to me about it. So I haven't seen written anything to do with Alpine and Adrian. And as I said, every single team in Formula One has now approached him. So Adrian is a person who is not absolutely guided by money, so you're assuming that money is the big draw here. I think what he has in his mind is that where he's been successful at Leighton House, where he was successful at Williams, then at McLaren, then at Red Bull, he likes a challenge. Now, every single team in Formula One is a massive challenge, as you know. So could I tell you, and would I tell you? Not in a million years, because Adrian is my friend and your friend number one, and we both adore him. We know what he can do. If you look at what he's able to do, he has a huge eye for fine detail. And if I can look at what, for example, is happening at the McLaren at the moment, how can you say what was happening 4 months ago, 3 months ago, and suddenly what we saw yesterday in Zandvoort? That's fine detail. No great design concept has been in there. It's honing the little tiny pieces, and it's all making the car slipperier. The engine hasn't got any better. The driver may have got better, but to win a race by over 20 seconds, the car has to be magic. And that's what Adrian does. He's able to make a simple good car into a magic car. And I'm sure he will do that if he decides to go racing in the future, because that's not a certainty yet. But I think time is coming that he's going to have to, a bit like you, going to have to get off the fence and make a decision.
So that's the breaking news then. So it's Adrian to Williams with a little bit of equity from the owners. From
Alpine, yeah. And Flavio, little bung on the Italian side of things. Let's move on, for Christ's sake. People are getting bored with you waffling on about the same old crap.
Right. Well, I look forward to you doing the exclusive here for your loyal listeners, the anchors, before it goes out publicly. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. That's the first time I've heard you silent. I'm going to have to put something in your mouth more often.
Move on, next story.
Zandvoort. What a brilliant performance from Lando Norris. For someone that came into the race weekend going, being questioned about their summer breaks and all that sort of good stuff. And then the question obviously came up about how he felt his own performance had been. And as Lando is incredibly honest, he goes, I haven't driven like a world champion. And then the risk in that is that, of course, that becomes a little crack that the journalists can keep sticking their finger in and causing problems down the line. But what he did was absolutely fantastic. A pole position lap like we would have seen from, Max when he's on form with the car, and Michael and Ayrton. Just one of those laps where you go, wow, 3/10, whatever it was, quicker than P2 in an era where it's incredibly close. And then having fluffed the start again, I was thinking, well, there's number 6. He just doesn't seem to get his starts right for whatever reason. Then comes back, manages his tyres, and strokes it to the creme de la creme of a fastest lap on the last lap on hard tyres, worn, gets that extra point. That was truly world class.
And massively impressive. It's the small things, isn't it? It was the fastest lap on the last lap on the hard tyres that said to me, we said maybe 2, 4, 3, whatever podcasts ago, Lando, if you're going to get in the ring with a bear and Max is a bear, be very sure you are well prepared and you know what you're getting yourself into. And yesterday, he now knows what it is. He developed himself. He thought about it. Look at him on the podium. Look at the answers to the questions. God, he was sublime. I have to tell you that all of those disappointments in Imola that people were criticising, why didn't he do this and why didn't he do that, and then other races. God, he's learned. He's learned so quickly. And my God, what a performance that was yesterday. And it just goes to prove that is pretty much the same car, except with little bits of detail. And those people, and Zach Brown and the people he's put together, my heavens, that is one fabulous car, certainly on yesterday's experience. But then again, we were probably saying the same things about Mercedes a couple of races ago. So what's happened? David, we're being dealt up an unbelievable season here, and which goes to and fro, and we just, I have no idea how it's going to end. If you ask me, is Max certain to win the World Championship? God, I'd have to tell you that I can't make that assessment just yet.
Yeah, the point gap is now down to 30 points between himself and Lando, and Max hasn't won any of the last 5 races.
No, that's not true, David. You'll have to do your accountancy a bit better. I think it's near enough 8 points per round, 9. It's about 70 points, not 30.
What, the gap between the drivers?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I do apologise. I'll defer on the points that.
It's just, and the reason why I say that is because I did actually work out the thing mathematically, and that is that it's still a big ask for Lando to gain on average 8 points per race, which would give him 72 points, which would give him the championship. Whereas with 70 points ahead,
I'll confirm you're correct. 70 points. I'll never doubt you again.
Jesus, when it comes to money, when it comes to numbers, David, never take me on, please don't, because I'd only wind up taking your cash.
I hear you. Sorry, I spoke over you.
Anyway, just so as I'm attentive and doing my research for this program and this podcast, for fear anyone thinks I'm just ad-libbing and just getting in behind the screen, yes, I do my research. Anyway, my money is still on Max, because what we have here is, you've got Lando, but remember the Piastri is there. Now, Piastri may return a favour, I don't know, and I'm sure that will happen. But then you've got Lewis, and you've got, there's been certain disappointments for going into the future. I just believe that George Russell, his turn of bit of luck must happen. And who's to say that he's not going to win in Monza? Because that would be one of the, it needs a very, very strong engine, and it needs a very, very slippery car to win in Monza. You should know that. You've won there. We were lucky we've won there. So it's a different circuit, and it's a different setup for the car. The engine is so important there.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's going to be interesting to go from the contrast of a high downforce Zandvoort 1 week later, the high-speed challenge of the Monza. Monza's been slightly modified as well, so that will be another challenge. in around the Ascari chicane. Just sort of referring back to the points difference that I meant, of course I was referring to the constructors, not the drivers. So it's only 30
you
points.
Creep. You never were. You hadn't got a fucking clue. You were lost.
It's 30 points the difference between McLaren and Red Bull and the constructors.
Your head is scrambled. I don't know where you were last night. Had you got a drink last night coming back on the plane?
No. I was very well reserved over the weekend, actually, because before going into the week, I was with a few friends on a boat, and it was pretty hardcore, which meant I had to make a trip to the temporary dentist because in a small drinking-related incident, I lost half my front tooth. So.
Give us a look, see how he did. He didn't do a bad job.
Yeah, not too bad. So I need to get that permanently seen to. The weekend was. That
was hardcore. We don't go into that kind of stuff.
No,
anymore.
I'll speak to you offline on that one.
So I have a good idea who you're with.
Yeah. So the constructors really does feel that the momentum is well and truly with McLaren. You mentioned Oscar there.
Sure.
Oscar didn't quite manage to put his weekend together in the same way that Lando. And even if I think Oscar
screwed him up. David, stop.
Okay, tell me.
McLaren screwed him up again. They left him out far too long, and you know that. And they've done that before, and then they're stacking at Silverstone. Look, as far as I'm concerned, and it's no harm, because I think Piastri has won his race. He now has the knowledge. He knows how to win and what it's like to win. But some of the things are playing absolutely away from him. And that is that I think they made a very serious mistake about the way they pitted him. They let it go far, far too late. Do you not accept that?
Well, look, I need to rerun that one to remember exactly. But I think that he has to own that he didn't quite get his lap together in qualifying. And that's where the difficulties start. And I have a lot of experience of not pulling together a qualifying lap. If you get ownership of the grid, get yourself at the front, that's exactly what you have, ownership. Sure. The minute you're on the back foot, which is where he was on the grid, having qualified third, then I think he lost that place again at the start. So the whole thing was going to be difficult for him. But my real point in the question was, this feels like McLaren have now the momentum to win this Constructors' Championship. And it's amazing to see where they were 2 years ago, last pretty much on the grid in Bahrain. And the Crown Prince Salman was in Zandvoort to see his team win this race. But it now feels like they're thinking like world champions, where I think even as early ago as Budapest, they were still thinking like, we need to just get the win, rather than seeing the big championship. And now I feel that they are starting to think like champions.
David, we were talking a similar kind of note, a similar tone about Mercedes at the last week prior to, because, when you saw what Lewis Hamilton did and George Russell did was sublime. So it's not just McLaren. I think Mercedes have absolutely done equally brilliant job. And, circumstances in the circuit. I personally think that the McLaren is more suited to a slightly higher downforce element or a certain race. So I'm very keen to see how they get on at Monza, which is low downforce and high power engine and various things, and knowing how slippery you make the car and taking as much downforce as you can off the car. So it's going to be absolutely intriguing race. I love Monza for all the reasons, because a lot of stories come out of Monza. I remember this time last year we had Gerhard Berger and Jean Alesi. My God, that was some podcast to reflect on. I don't want to do too many more of them. But anyway, the reality is that Formula One is in unbelievable state at the moment, and it's great, despite the fact that I think yesterday was not a great race.
No, it wasn't a classic Grand Prix in terms of action. And you're absolutely right that Mercedes Grand Prix have won 3 of the last 5 Grand Prix, certainly about 3 of the 4 before going into the break. So they were on a bit of a roll there. So yeah, it's the ebb and flow of performance. So if anyone else stand out for you in Zandvoort that you want to give a mention to, there was no real incidents apart from Logan Sargent binning it in qualifying. It's uncomfortable, isn't it, to see drivers struggling. And of course, we have to comment on it. He drove it onto the grass and then lost it in the wet. And it was an unnecessarily massive amount of damage as far as I'm concerned. So anything else coming out of Zandvoort before we move on to Monza?
I think what I just would like to say, there's a couple of things. I missed you desperately during that break. We had a couple of things. David, I had a most amazing opportunity whereby I was asked to give Ali, who is a great friend of yours and me, Ali asked me would I give her away at her wedding. That was a huge thrill. I was absolutely overjoyed to do it, and I took it very seriously. I did wear some very stupid clothing gear, but it was...
That doesn't surprise me.
It was a 60s dress, but it was like Glastonbury on steroids. It had everything. It was 3 days. My God, Jimmy Carr. It had Squeeze, Luca, the Robbers. We all played. And then what was amazing on the actual at dinner, he took 3 shows, I think Mamma Mia, Les Miserables, and Lion King, and he had all the principal actors and singers from those shows come and entertain us. God, what Richard and Ali did at that wedding was something ridiculously fantastic. It was an amazing affair. And I loved it. This could have an influence on you and Sigrid, which is important. During Jimmy Carr, as you know, the words he uses are absolutely even makes you look like saintly. But anyway, he turned around and he said, I do love a really nice love story. Boy meets girl. Girl goes home, has a look at the website, goes into Google to see how much he's got, and strangely enough, finds he's a billionaire. And you know what the most ridiculous thing is? They fall in love. So I love that one.
Yeah, as a bit of mischief. Did they take it in good faith? Because I think
hang on. Richard is such a... He is such a character that he loves that kind of... I mean, you wouldn't hire Jimmy Carr unless you knew you were going to get pasted. Some of the things he came out with was insane.
Well, EJ, for the listeners that don't know, Richard Hadida and his wife, Ali, I was also invited, so you're not going to take all the glory at being this spectacular wedding, but unlike you being partially retired, I have to still go out and be gainfully employed. So I missed the fun, but a lovely couple they are, and very, very kind and sharing, and it sounded like an epic weekend. So congratulations to Richard and Ali.
Now, to counteract that, which is a very happy occasion, was, most people will know about the sinking of the yacht off Sicily at the weekend. Mike Smith, who's very well known. But my own capacity, Rick Thomas, who was our chef for a long time, was the first one to be found drowned. And that was a particularly sad moment because he was a great guy. And some of the people that he affected, I remember the letter that Amanda Newey wrote to me about it because they had stayed good friends. Funny enough, we had been in Capri and he did this amazing barbecue on some of the rocks that we all remembered fondly. So our hearts go out to the family of Rick and Amanda too. You were very close to him. So difficult times during that break. There was highs and there were certainly lows.
Yeah, well said, EJ. Very often in these sorts of situations where a high-profile person on board tends to take all the headlines, you very often don't get recognition for the other names of the incredible people. So, yeah, tragic circumstances, which reminds me of, moving on to Monza, the tragedy of 97, where when I won the Grand Prix, it came the week after the passing of Princess Diana, which,
sure,
as anyone who was around at that time will remember how it completely moved a nation, with people lining the roads all the way to her final resting place, and I'm sure others around the world. So it's incredible how some people kind of go beyond their small peer group. You know, they can actually, a bit like when Ayrton passed in 94, yeah, there was people who just knew him as a racing driver, travelled to Brazil to line the streets. It's incredible.
So I'm so glad that you mentioned Ayrton in the same boat, because for me they were compatible, weren't they? Diana was the most beautiful, gorgeous, serene member of the Royal Society in Britain, and Ayrton grew up to be a Royal Society in Brazil and globally in terms of he had that effect. And when I go the odd time running or walking in Hyde Park and you follow the Princess Diana Trail, which is all nicely, neatly laid out on the footpaths. I remember her so well because with Dodie, and it was a tragic time, and we were involved and knew them not particularly well, but of course knew them, and mainly in the latter times when Dodie and herself were very close, and that's my memory of her. She was a genius, and well done for you for picking her out at that time. And I think, if I'm right, you commemorated your win, or you gave your win to her memory, and that was very, very brilliant of you to do that.
Well, it's one of those moments in life where all of the drivers agree not to spray the champagne, to be doing such a thing off the back of tragedy, which of course happens every day, but in memory of all those that have passed. And that is the darker side of life. But the brighter side of life, if you're a Formula One fan, is that we go to the Temple of Speed, Monza, this weekend. A track that you've got great memories at, myself. The Tifosi, of course, will be out in force. It maybe won't be quite as loud as the Dutch army for Max in Zandvoort, but they have a different energy. It may not be made up of DJs and chanting, but there's something, there's a kind of historical background mumbling type noise that comes from the grandstands that you're just constantly aware of. The energy is electric.
But it's not just that. It has, beyond doubt, I think more great stories have been broken there, because Monza seems to be the epitome of let's leave that story till we get to Monza. Let's do that when we get to Monza. Monza has that great appeal because I think more international journalists go there. It's at the end of summer. It's a changeover period, so it's the second half of the race season. Monza, for me, obviously I'm biased because I have such fantastic memories, apart from Ron Dennis coming to me. No, including Ron Dennis coming to me, and he said, at least you won one race by with credit or something like that. So he just couldn't say to me, but I love Ron. I have to say my attitude towards Ron in years has changed. He is such a delight at the moment, but in those days he could be quite snarly, and he said, at least you won one race by
on merit.
Play.
Yeah,
merit. Good, well done, David.
Yeah. Well, talk about wins. Who do we, the EJ crystal balls? Ferrari really need a bit of a boost. They've been been the also-rans in the last few races. And Charles did a great job at the weekend, Carlos as well, to get themselves some solid points. But they really need to deliver something better. And historically, amazingly, Ferrari used to always find a little bit extra top speed in Monza.
Why do you think that is, David? Come on, outline that. Why did you say that? Come on, you must know the inside track here.
Well, back in the day, there was always strong rumours that they would the scrutineers would turn a blind eye to the engine or the fuel or whatever. Of course, those days are long since gone. But yes. Who do you predict is going to be in the running based on what you saw in Spa, I guess, is the last fast circuit we were at?
You're absolutely right. The scrutineers in those days against Ferrari, you would wind up in Maranello for a little drinks party beforehand, and then you'd turn up at Monza, and everybody believed, the conspiracy theories amongst us. We'd all believed that they had a 3.4 litre engine, and we were struck with a 3 litre engine. And surprisingly enough, their engine was always an awful lot better than anyone else's there. So who's to say that they were right and who's wrong? And that is a conspiracy theory. That is not a true fact. I have no real knowledge of it. It was just part of the action. Anyway, I would like to see, I don't know why, but I'd like to see George Russell win this race. My heart still goes out to him for that weight. How he drove that car on those tires over all that distance. I think he struggled a little bit yesterday, but at the same time, he fights well. So let's see what happens. I think the Mercedes engine will be strong. It depends on which car it's in. It could be in a Williams. It could be actually in a McLaren. But I just feel that George has a chance of winning this.
Well, I think he would be a popular winner. He wouldn't be as popular as Charles Leclerc or Carlos Sainz.
Of course not.
But I just have a feeling we mentioned Zandvoort. No, there wasn't that much action. Everyone did their strategies, and the result was the result. But I just have a feeling that maybe Monza will bring a little incident, a lot of high speed into tight corners, and maybe we get a surprise winner. Maybe it's Checo Perez in a shocking return to winning form. Maybe it's Fernando Alonso in the Aston, a former Ferrari driver. That would be kind of cool to get some shock results.
I think now you've gone back into dreaming mode, and I'm not sure if you've actually got out of bed when you just said that statement, because certain things are clear, and that is that night follows day, and that's not going to happen.
Or does day follow night?
Well, whatever way it works, but everyone has their view. And so, if it was very wet, yes, you could see Checo because he's clever in that. But they've caught onto what Checo used to do, say, at Azerbaijan or wherever it is. He was clever with the road circuits and how he structured it. I think this will be a difficult race. It's altogether too fast at the front. It's too furious, and I think you'll get the old protagonists. I think you'll get Max, you get Lando, Piastri, the two Mercedes boys. And of course, you've got to include the Ferrari boys there. Who of the two is quickest at the moment? You never really know. And the person who surprises us most and wins the races is Carlos. But on yesterday's performance, the fact that the Piastri couldn't actually make the pass on Leclerc, I think he drove a particularly good race, and we should give him credit for that.
Yeah, I think that there's a number of drivers that have got the winning capabilities now that we could get a wee surprise there. But time will tell, EJ, time will tell. Any other thoughts ahead of wrapping up this particular show? We're done. Well, in that case...
and you're off to the friendly dentist, are you?
Well,
what else did they damage on you?
Just the front tooth, but I'll get through that. But
how many drinks had you got at that stage?
Oh, several.
Far too many to remember.
Far too many to remember, which is why I felt no pain. EJ, it's been great to catch up.
I've missed you, DC.
Likewise.
You're a beacon in my life. I miss you.
Whereabouts are you, actually? I never asked that at the beginning.
I'm down the road from you. You're in Monaco. I'm in Monaco, but we've decided perhaps not to. Are you around this week?
I am around. So shall we meet up for a wee sherbet?
We should meet up. I'll try and make it a breakfast or a lunch so I don't have to consume too much alcohol with you. Okay, goodbye. Come on, ring this one off.
Okay, I will. Well, to our listeners, thank you very much. And of course, you can keep in touch on our social media and by emailing us at ffs@whisper.tv. So from David Coulthard, it's goodbye for now. And from Eddie Jordan...
That's me, guys. Bye-bye.